this video, we are going to deal with a very difficult type of paragraph argument question, and that is the bold-faced reasoning question. As you can see, massive paragraph. They're not always massive, but they tend to be on the longer side. What you'll notice is that a couple parts, not necessarily sentences, are bold-faced. The first bold-faced part that I put in brackets here is a sentence. The second is the latter half of a sentence, and it comes at the very end. Typically, one will come near the beginning and one will come near the end, so there'll be a break in between. Now, the real meat of this video is how to attack these difficult questions. So what you want to do is you want to read, and right when you get to the first bold-faced part, think to yourself, what is this doing? You may want to write a little note, and then you want to continue reading. When you get to the second bold-faced part down here, you want to write another note. What, in your own words, is this second bold-faced part doing? At that point, I recommend going back and rereading this part again to make sure you have a good idea of what this bold-faced part does and how it matches up to this bold-faced part. So let's do that. Carvania is known to have a greater number of auto fatalities per capita than is the neighboring province of Che. We call that Che. Nonetheless, the number of collisions per capita that result in whiplash injuries is less than half those per capita of neighboring Che. Aha! So there's this phenomenon here. Carvania, more auto fatalities, but fewer, again, per capita, whiplash injuries. So this bold-faced part is something that doesn't really match up with the sentence right here. So it's a surprise. In a sense, it's a paradox. Wow, Carvania has so many auto fatalities, but far fewer whiplash injuries. So interesting. So you can see that, again, the bold-faced part doesn't match up with this observed phenomenon. And then we continue reading. While such a finding implies that accidents occurring in Che are more likely to result in whiplash, there's another fact that should not be overlooked. Unlike insurance providers in Cheverell or Che, those in Carvania do not pay premiums for automobile accident-related whiplash. Because many accidents of whiplash apparently go unreported in Carvania, and now here's the important part, the actual number per capita of incidents of whiplash in Carvania may be equal to, if not more than, the number. And so this is the main conclusion. It's been building up to this. This conclusion wouldn't make any sense without this middle part here. And so the middle part is to help us build that conclusion. However, the bold-faced part, you don't want to start trying to define every part of the paragraph. Know that the last part here is the main conclusion. And again, know what each bold-faced part is doing. So main conclusion and this observation that, hey, this is surprising. It doesn't match up with the reality. Now you'll notice that I struggled a lot more with the first bold-faced part. The second part was easy. And that's often going to happen. And that's fine. The reason why is you can go here to the answer choices, and we can say, well, we just want to focus on the easier one, which is the second. We know it's the main conclusion. Great. A could definitely work. Look at B, though. The second is that explanation. No, we know it's the conclusion. C, the first is the fact, and again, we don't really care about the first part. We care about the second part of the sentence where it talks about the second, because we know it is the main conclusion. So C could be an answer. Notice D cannot be. It limits the extent of this claim. And just like that, we can get rid of two of the answer choices, which doesn't sound like much, but it will actually save you a lot of time. Now we can deal with the first part. Let's start with A. The first is a claim that challenges the main conclusion. Wait a second. That's not the case. We read that there's a surprise. One wouldn't think that there would be fewer whiplash injuries. Nonetheless, there are fewer whiplash injuries in Carvania than in Che. However, this part doesn't challenge the main conclusion. The main conclusion is describing this phenomena in the first bold-faced part. Why is this the case? It's giving us an answer, so A is not it. C, the first is a fact that is not consistent with an observed phenomenon. Observed phenomenon is that there are great number of auto fatalities, or greater number of auto fatalities in Carvania than in Che. Yet, there are more whiplash injuries. This is not consistent with an observed phenomenon. And C is the answer. Now, some of you may balk and say, well, this doesn't kind of sound like what we're going for, and that's fine. Oftentimes the language is stilted and vague and really difficult to wrap your head around. And so if you're unsure, as you'll oftentimes be at these, go to E, because remember, this is a process of elimination exercise. E. The first part is an intermediate conclusion, the second is the primary conclusion. Well, conclusion it was, but did we say that the first part was an intermediate conclusion? No. And what does this even mean, an intermediate conclusion? Well, this would describe a paragraph, and if we can actually go back here, and we can imagine that there's even more now, that the paragraph goes on writing more and building up another point to lead to another conclusion. Then you would have this conclusion no longer being a main conclusion, but being an intermediate conclusion. That's rare. Obviously, those tend to be even longer, but that's not what was going on here. And so therefore, we can eliminate answer choice E based on being able to get rid of this right off the bat. Again, the wording here is difficult, awkward, but we've eliminated everything else, and so C is the answer. So my advice is to practice a lot of these questions when you go through the product and go back and forth. But the main part is not to get caught up in the verbiage. See that? That's verbiage. A lot of this up here, this is verbiage. Try as much as possible to think about what the bold-faced parts are doing. Remember words like the premises we talked about, how the premises lead to the conclusion or supporting evidence. Think in those terms as much as possible, because many of these arguments are constructed in that manner. And if you think before you jump into the water that is, or the swamp that is the answer choices, you'll save a lot of time. And then finally, strategies that help us out are dealing with half of each answer choice, if you know that is what each half is doing. Because remember, one of the bold-faced parts is usually easier to define, and that way you can eliminate and home in more quickly on the correct answer.